How did someone fail miserably at trying to outsmart you? My stepbrother Thorne thought he was clever. He'd spent 6 months setting up the perfect scam, one that would drain my inheritance and leave me penniless while he sailed off into early retirement. What he didn't know was that I'd been watching him the entire time. It started when Dad died and left me his half of the family business. Thorne got the other half, which seemed fair, until I realized he'd been embezzling for years. Small amounts at first. A few hundred here, a couple thousand there. Nothing that would trigger an audit, but Thorne got greedy. After Dad's funeral, he approached me with this concerned expression, like he actually cared. "The business is struggling," he said, showing me doctored financial statement. "We need to sell before we lose everything." He had a buyer lined up already, his college roommate, conveniently. They'd split my share. I'd get pennies, and I'd never know the company was actually worth millions. I played along, nodded at the right moments, asked naive questions, let him think I was the clueless little sister who'd majored in art history instead of business. I even pretended to cry when he showed me the fake debt numbers, asking what Dad would have wanted us to do. What Thorne didn't realize was that Dad had taught me to read financial statements when I was 12. I'd been secretly accessing the company's real books through Dad's old login, one Thorne had forgotten to disable. For 3 months, I documented everything, every fake invoice, every phantom expense, every dollar he'd funneled into his offshore accounts. I even tracked the properties he'd bought with stolen money, each one titled under different LLC names he thought were untraceable. Then I hired a forensic accountant, the kind that works with the FBI on fraud cases. The night before we were supposed to sign the sale papers, I invited Thorne to dinner at Dad's favorite restaurant. He showed up in a new suit, probably already picturing his beach house in the Caymans. "I have something to show you," I said, sliding a folder across the table. His face went white as he opened it. Inside were copies of everything: bank statements, wire transfers, property deeds, emails between him and his accomplice. 7 years of systematic theft, all documented in brutal detail. "Here's what's going to happen," I said calmly. "You're going to sign over your half of the business to me, tonight." He tried to bluster, threatened to call the police on me for hacking, called me ungrateful, said Dad would be ashamed of what I'd become. I pulled out my phone and showed him the email draft, addressed to the FBI, the IRS, and the state attorney general. My finger hovered over the send button. "Or," I continued, "I can send this, and you can explain to a federal judge why you've been laundering money through 17 different shell companies." His hands were shaking as he signed the transfer papers. I had a notary waiting in a private room upstairs. Everything legal, everything binding. As he stood to leave, he looked at me with pure hatred. "You're going to regret this," he hissed. But here's what made him fail so miserably. He had no idea what I'd actually discovered in those files. The embezzlement was just the surface. Buried in his emails was something far worse. Something involving Dad's death. Something that would explain why the autopsy Dad had specifically requested in his will was never performed. Why the cremation happened so quickly. Why Thorne had been the one to identify the body when I was conveniently sent out of town that week. Thorne's lawyer called me yesterday. Apparently, he's willing to negotiate. Wants to know what it'll take for me to delete certain files. I couldn't fit what happens next in this short video, watch the rest down below.